Our final speaker on this panel is Jihoon Kim. Jihoon Kim is Associate Professor of Cinema and Media Studies at Chung-ang University and will be a Fulbright Visiting Scholar in the Film and Media Studies program at Columbia University until December 31st, 2021. He is the author of Between Film, Video, and the Digital, Hybrid Moving Images in the Post-Media Age, published by Bloomsbury in 2016, and completing 2 books on the 21st century expanded documentary forms and on the first comprehensive overview of Korean documentary cinema. Welcome.
Yeah. Okay, let me read my paper super fast because of time limitation. So Choi Seung-hee, of course, a Korean-born dancer and choreographer who became initially famous for innovating the method of her teacher, Baku, as the creator of modern Japanese dance, also devoted herself to rehabilitating the traditional Korean dance, a dance that was preserved only in the performance of Gi-seng, Korean geisha, in drinking parties since the mid-1930s. While confessing that her dance might, quote, be nothing more than formal imitation of Western dance, end quote. Choi considered her approach to still stylize the traditional Korean dance more than the restoration of each forgotten trace. Her project, albeit having left unfinished, prompted her to delve into other traditions of East Asian dances and to grab them with her knowledge of the Western modern dance and her choreographic body that embodied it. These 2 traditions, however, were intertwined with and reflected by her exilic drift across the multiple geographical and ideological borders that she crossed during her life, from her shuffling between the Japanese Empire and colonial Joseon to her travels to the United States, South America, and Europe for her shows to the Western audiences and critics, to her collaborative performances for Japanese soldiers at the Asian front of World War II, to her socialist exploration into the Chinese and Korean dances in China and North Korea after the end of the war. These complex trajectories and the shortage of sufficient documents associated with Choi's performance has enabled her project and its corresponding choreographic bodies and ideas to be an elusive object in motion, which has fascinated scholars and artists of her future generations. Among them is Korean artist Hwayeon, who has conducted her artistic research into Choi's archives matter the vision of the Korean pavilion of 58 Venice Biennial in 2019 by the name of Choi's choreographic work. I argue that Nam's approach to Choi's ideas, practice of choreography in dancers from the Peninsula contributes to reframing them as inter-Asian dance as an utopian aspiration whose achievement has remained unfulfilled, one that imagined an alternative to the construct of Asian dance marked by the consumption of exercise bodies and gestures in the 20th century North America and Europe, through incorporating the traditions of dances in East Asia and making their choreographic and gesture links. In order to characterize Choi's method as a sort of her pursuit for the alternative narrative production of regional dance traditions, the paper showed draws on Chen Guangxin's now influential concept of Asia's method, which he defines as, quote, a critical proposition to transform the existing narrative structure and at the same time to transform ourselves, end quote. This suggests that by using the idea of Asia as an imaginary anchoring point, societies in Asia can become each other's point of reference so that their understanding of the self may be transformed and subjectivity rebuilt. It was during her 4-year tours to the United States and Europe from 1937 to 1941 that Choi's idea of the inter-Asian dance became more concretized. In a short contribution to the journal Samchari that he wrote after her return from the tours, she made it clear that unlike other Asian dancers who tended to introduce Western dance upon their return from performing in Europe and America, her case, quote, may have been the opposite, for it was Eastern dance that I imported, end quote. Her feature articles that she sent to the Asahi Shimbun in 1940 anticipated this impression, which is now read as demonstrating that her idea of inter-Asian dance bloomed during the tour. So you can see this quotation. Next. Dancer from the Peninsula is a 4-channel video installation composed of the interplay of documents, photos, reenacted performance, and the images of flowers. Besides the new way of the new system published in the Asahi Shimbun in 1940, the document includes Choi's writings from 1941 to 1956, including her letters to Joseon audiences in 1941 and to Ishibaku in 1956, and transcripts from Choi's roundtable discussion with the female artists of Shanghai in May 1945. These writings are juxtaposed with a rich collection of photos related to her transnational trajectories across the continent, as well as the political and cultural borders, from snapshots of her sightseeing in the middle of her tours in Europe and the United States and South America, to stills of her performances based on the rehabilitation of the Korean traditional dance from the 1930s and to the 1940s. Nam's audiovisual montage in Dancer from the Peninsula present all these textual and photographic materials in a way that enables viewers to create multiple associations between them rather than to observe any prescribed interpretation. This contributes to shedding new light on Choi's idea of the Asian dance tradition in terms of an inter-Asian method, as well as revealing several ideological processes that affected its realizations, including self-Occidentalism, pro-Japanese imperialism, socialism, and the Juche ideology of North Korea. The work is also remarkable in terms of its use of two additional components, a performance reenactment and the images of the flower. Nam's deployment of these two could be viewed in tandem with the double status of the archival materials that center around Choi's trajectory of life, her choreographic bodies, and the shifting ideas of dance. The photos and documents could help viewers approach and carve out Choi's inter-Asian method developed from the late 1930s to the 1950s, but this does not necessarily mean that they could be able to incarnate its corporeal and kinesthetic dimensions. Nam's method that copes with these absences to establish Dancer from the Peninsula as a kind of screen dance. In this form, that creates dance by the camera. Choi's original performance is made by a young performer in navy shirts and pants, and Nam's camera frames her body parts in a series of close-ups. They are then associated with the images of shaking flowers that share the same background of the performance, the darkness without any props. While the close-ups of the dance give expression to Nam's desire to approximate Choi's choreography and performances evidenced by the photos and documents, what is body part of the dancer in the presence of such is the impossibility of restoring Choi's body of the past with a totalizing picture. As the picture images of the dancer are juxtaposed with the documents, photos, and voiceover of Choi's writings, however, Dancer from the Peninsula does more than validate this impossibility. It goes so far as to suggest that Choi's method of the inter-Asian dance could be reimagined and reconstructed in a way that reassembles our shifting positions across different letters from competing perspective on the aesthetics and politics of her practices. If the flowers incorporate the beauty of Choi's body that was celebrated by the observers from the different national and cultural contexts that framed it from the imperial to the Cold War era, then their shaking appearances function as the equivalent of Choi's changing process for the idea of dance, as well as of the geopolitical and ideological influences that affected her quest across national borders. Nam's combination of studying archives and making moving images grounded in the different formats and genres has been viewed as a kind of artistic research. Having originated from the post-avant-garde practices in North America and Europe, artistic research has been known as aiming not only to integrate art and research, but also to produce narrative with artistic experimentations in a way that disrupts and crosses disciplinary borders between artistic and academic approaches. From this perspective, Choi Seung-hee is a kind of figure that tends to want to conduct that kind of artistic research, not only because her dynamic trajectory of life in which multiple and contradictory political, ideological and cultural factors are implicated, but also because of existing archival materials which encompass newspaper articles, her writings, photos, drawings, and documentation films demand multi-dimensional approaches shuffling between and incorporating studying and creation. Nam's artistic research applied to mainstream does more than contextualize choice choreographic bodies and thoughts in drips within the inter-Asian dance as a method. Nam also was aware of the temporal and material discrepancies in her conversation with Choi of the structural elusiveness of her choreographic ideas and bodies in approaching her archive and its materials. For this reason, Nam's artistic research applied to her solo exhibition mainstream is also geared toward the issue of performance's inherent ephemerality and non-repeatability that Peggy Perrin has once famously posited. Quote, performance in a strict ontological sense is non-reproductive, end quote. Rather than relying on Perrin's assertion, Nam's approach to Choi's archive, I argue, is akin to Rebecca Schneider's suggestions that any archiving or documentation of performance starts from its disappearance. Due to the performance's resistance to being documented or archived, any documentation or archive of it suffers from a loss with its materials, object, records, and reenactment, making its disappearance and ephemerality. This inherent lag, however, also makes the documentation or archive operate so that it is able to transmit the knowledge of the performance, makes possible its existence in multiple forms, and entails multiple interpretations of it. In this paper, I classify Nam's video pieces and documentations into two categories in terms of how her ambivalent approach to Choi's archive produces the knowledge and experience of her choreographic ideas and bodies in intermediate, interdisciplinary, and intergenerational ways. The first category of this method is Nam's reenactment of Choi's performance coupled with the video documentations of young dancers who play them. Ehera Noara, a video of that documents reenactment of Choi's performance of the same title, shows a female performer rehearsing Choi's choreographic movements and gestures inside the main room of the gallery. The intersection of the performer and the archive and of the stage and the white cube in the dance in this exhibition allows viewers to see not simply the disappearance of Choi's original movements and gestures, but also the extent to which this disappearance promotes different ways of producing its knowledge and experience, although they are subject to partiality, loss, forgetting, and modification. Nam's emphasis on the potentiality for this production in its intergeneration and intermediate ways is also buried in study for which Choi's 1935 duet dance of the same title, inspired from Auguste Rodin's The Kiss, is restated by the drills and conversations of the two young female performers who studies each photos and documents. So this is my final slide. Finally, the second category of Nam's method includes video pieces that express her multiplied and fluid subjectivity based with the structural lag of Choi's archive and with the elusiveness of her original performance. The Night of Chuseok features an imaginary stand-in of Choi. The image of her strolling inside each forest is overlaid with a white rectangle in which Nam's handwritten memos and drawings are presented. The drawings are viewed as Nam's choreographic notation as a trace of recording the movements of a dance, in this case, Choi's performance, and the handwritten memos support Nam's ideas and reflections on the performance whose restoration had to rely on a limited number of photos and documents. In a similar vein, Serenade seems to encapsulate Nam's idea of approximating and reincarnating Choi's choreographic method and her choreographic bodies in a way that acknowledges their ephemerality or obscurity. This 7-minute single-channel video piece juxtaposes these several photographs of her Choi's performance with the video footage of a female performer who repeats it. Interspersed between these two elements are images of a ball repeatedly falling and rebounding before coming to stop and then resuming its motion. This cyclical moment of the ball then gives physical and kinetic expression to Nam's interplay with Choi's performances and its unfinished archive, approaching the past and returning to the present with the intersection of absence and imaginative recreation. Thank you for your attention.